Have you ever worked with a couple where one or both partners are basically litigators in love? They don't want connection. They want a verdict. They want to be right. In relational life therapy, we call that one of the 5 losing strategies, being right. My name is Desirae Ysasi, and I'm the Director of Training and Certification for the Relational Life Institute. And I wanted to talk some more with you today about losing strategies, and this one in particular, the strategy of being right. This usually involves one or both people in the dynamic getting really fixated on the objective reality of what happened. It can show up in a number of ways. Probably most commonly is people wanting to correct the other's story. That's not what was said. That's not what I did. That's not how I said it. That's not when it took place. I wasn't that aggressive. I did help you out more in the kitchen that night than what you're recalling. Another way that being right can show up is also holding oneself as the subject matter expert. Well, it could look something like, this is the way things are supposed to be done. This is the right way to do bedtime with the kids. It's got to be in this order or in service of this parenting style. And there's not a lot of curiosity about the other person's thoughts, perspectives, desires, plans. And when we can't be curious about the other person's point of view, we get caught up in kind of our own superiority and grandiosity. And again, it moves us out of connection. It moves us in a one-up position over our partner. And when we're in that kind of dynamic, intimacy is eroded and the connection is lost. I was working with a couple the other week, and they were wanting to tell me about an argument, a conflict they had had since our last session. It was a husband-wife. The husband starts, he's telling me what happened, and every other sentence, his wife, in this really nice, friendly way, would kind of lean over and go, oh, no, that was on Saturday, not on Sunday. No, that's not exactly what your mother said. She said this. Wait, no, actually, if you remember, what I had wanted you to do was, I didn't quite catch it at first because normally people are a lot more aggressive or confrontational when they're correcting their spouse, but she was really nice about it. But nonetheless, I did notice as I was trying to hear the husband's point of view, I found myself getting kind of frustrated and annoyed. And when I turned my attention to him, he looked that way as well. He was doing a good job of keeping it contained, but I could feel the energy underneath starting to get a little irritable. And so what I did was I pointed that out to her and said, could I pause you for a second? Are you noticing that every other sentence you're interjecting to correct what he's telling? And I get the sense that you think you're being really helpful when you're doing that. But actually, I think it's getting in the way of me even understanding what's going on. And as I watch him and as I notice myself, I'm feeling a shift energetically in the dynamic. Are you aware that you're doing that? Are you aware that it is beginning to potentially create some frustration and some disconnect? She actually, thankfully, was able to take that in, and she really appreciated me holding that mirror up for her. And what I began to explain to her is that this is a losing strategy, because ultimately what I watch unfold is the couple move into disconnection. They turn away from each other, and they're losing out on intimacy. So you might be wondering, how does this even begin to become a strategy? Honestly, it comes from some sort of adaptive place in their history. What does that mean? It means that this tactic served a purpose at some point in their life. It was a strategy that they adapted in their family system growing up as a way to deal with whatever the relational dynamics were in that family of origin. So that could have been modeled for them. They may have grown up with a parent that kind of took on that role of expert or role of professor and sort of teaching everyone and schooling everyone on the right way, or someone that took a really pragmatic approach to having conversation and really corrected that. And so when we see that happen and we internalize it by modeling, it then becomes something that we do in our relationship. It could also have evolved from perhaps a lot of conflict in the family of origin. Sometimes we have clients that had really strong disciplinarians as parents or caregivers, and so they constantly found themselves in a position of having to defend themselves, having to prove when they were right or when the other person was wrong, and it was a strategy that kept them safe. It was a strategy that kept them out of the line of fire, out of the punishment, out of the discipline, and so it worked for them perhaps at that time in their life, but now it's maladaptive. We say that a lot in relational life therapy. What was adaptive then is maladaptive now. So you can still talk about it in a way that honors where the strategy came from and doesn't set them up to feel like a terrible person because they do this. But we can show them that while this served them at one time, it is costly now and is creating the problems in their relationship now, or at least contributing to them, and that we can show them another way. We can show them how to lean into curiosity. We can learn how to soften holding their point of view as the correct one and begin to look for ways that they can integrate their partner's point of view into their perspective and come away with something that's more connected and works well for both of them. What I like to work with couples around, and what you might want to try if you have one or both partners that like to be right, is to help them understand that relationally speaking, there is no objective reality. There is no one tried and true version of events. In fact, there's actually two subjective realities co-occurring at the exact same time. And rather than focus on proving that one true objective reality, what we want to try to think about is how can we integrate the two subjective realities so that we can come away with more understanding of how each of us experienced the thing that happened and what we can do to resolve it. What I want to invite you to think about as you're working with your couples, can you notice, first and foremost, when one or the other of your clients is moving into this strategy? Can you find ways to point that out and sort of hold up a mirror for them? And then can you help them to notice how it's a problem in the relationship, how it turns them into adversaries or opponents instead of being on the same side and working toward a solution together. So if you found this helpful and you're noticing that you'd like to learn more about the losing strategies that couples fall into, definitely be sure to subscribe to this channel and click the bell so that you get notifications when we post new videos. I'll continue to talk about the 5 losing strategies so that you can have a sense of what each of them looks like with the couples that you're working with.